Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into a really fundamental question, isn't it? As old as humanity itself.
Absolutely.
It's this question that, well, Skylar Fiction's work really highlights how it echoes everywhere, from refugee camps
Mm.
all the way to Wall Street boardrooms. You hear it in conflict zones. You see it at fancy banquets.
hmm The sheer inequality, the suffering, it persists.
It really does. And it kind of demands something from us, doesn't it?
Right.
More than just, silence. And history has given us these two uh, incredibly powerful voices rising above all that noise.
Yeah, we're talking about Jesus of Nazareth and Muhammad of Mecca, two towering figures.
Right.
And they both stepped onto a stage of, well, immense human struggle, claimed divine inspiration, and both in their own, really profound ways called humanity to care for the least among us.
And here's the fascinating part, the thing that really grabs you. Their methods were just so different, right? While the goal might seem similar, compassion, justice, their actual approaches to answering that core question, what do we owe each other?
Yeah.
They were dramatically, almost uh, diametrically opposed sometimes.
That's a great way to put it. Diametrically different. And that stark difference is precisely why today's deep dive, I think, is going to be so compelling for you listening.
So we're really embarking on this comparative exploration, looking at their teachings on compassion, charity, moral duty.
All through the lens of Skylar Fiction's fantastic work, Become Love, Build Justice, Jesus and Mohammed on Helping Others, it really lays it out.
It does. And our mission today, it's not about judgment, right? Or just comparing for the sake of it.
No, not at all. We want to truly get to the heart of it, understand the core tenets of love and justice from both figures.
Looking honestly at the beauty, yes, but also.
Also the uncomfortable bits, the contradictions within their legacies, because they're there.
They are. And the goal is to see what they actually taught about helping others. And maybe, get a deeper sense of what compassion itself really means.
Exactly. What is the soul of compassion?
One of the most compelling things fiction points out is this central tension. It really makes you stop and think. Jesus, as we'll see, he calls individuals to essentially become love itself. It's this radical purity, almost. Well, fiction calls it unlivable sometimes.
Right. It's intensely personal, an internal shift.
Totally. And then Mohammed. He commands the building of a just society. It's
Yeah.
rooted in, concrete obligation, community care.
Very systemic, outward focused. It's an imperative to act, to build structures.
So it's not about picking one, is it?
No, fiction argues strongly against that, especially now, in our age of, this widening inequality gap.
Oh.
We desperately need both.
Both the dangerous simplicity of Jesus' love.
And the practical strength of Muhammad's justice. They complement each other in a way.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's set the stage. These two prophets, they emerged into what fiction calls a broken world, but broken in different ways, right?
Precisely. Different kinds of brokenness demanding different kinds of answers. Think about Jesus' time first.
Okay.
He wandered, as fiction puts it, barefoot among beggars. This was Roman-ruled Judea. Brutal.
Imperial power.
Exactly. The poor weren't just an afterthought. They were actively crushed by the system, by economic exploitation, and even the temple, the supposed spiritual heart.
Corrupted.
Yeah, deeply entangled in politics, wealth, pretty far removed from the everyday struggles of ordinary people.
So in that context,
Jesus' teachings weren't just revolutionary, they shattered expectations. They felt like riddles sometimes because of their almost impossible purity.
challenging every norm about power, wealth.
Everything. His message was baffling precisely because it was so radically simple, demanding this huge internal shift in values, turning the whole world upside down, really.
No, it's hard to imagine the shockwaves. Okay, now fast forward. Muhammad's world. 7th century Arabia.
A completely different scene, but just as broken. Fiction describes it as rampant with tribal warfare, economic collapse, and spiritual confusion.
Chaos.
Total chaos. Poverty wasn't just a problem, it was endemic. It shaped everything. You had practices like, tragically, female infanticide, burying baby girls because they were seen as an economic burden.
Unthinkable.
And slavery was just normal. Slaves were literally currency, a core part of the economy, the social structure, a profoundly different kind of brokenness than Jesus faced.
Which leads us straight to that core difference in their approaches.
Exactly. Jesus' path was intensely personal, individual, transformative. He wasn't handing out blueprints for, a new government or economic policy.
About 5-point plans.
Not at all. His teachings often defy logic from a purely worldly standpoint, calling for this almost irrational, endless love.
Like his commands. Love your enemies.
Yeah, or lend without expecting a turn, give to the one who asks, sell your possessions to feed the poor. These are radical
As a
demands.
Good Samaritan story.
That's not just a nice story, it's a direct challenge, right? Who actually deserves our mercy? He blows the boundaries wide open, beyond tribe, beyond nation, beyond religion. It's a radical expansion of who counts as our neighbor.
Okay, so Jesus is this intense, personal, internal transformation. How did Muhammad's approach differ so fundamentally? Was it just preaching too, or?
That's the key question. And no, it wasn't just preaching. Muhammad acted. He organized, governed, and reformed. His approach was systemic, organizational, deeply reformative.
Architecture, you called it earlier.
Yes, the architecture for a compassionate society. Where Jesus offered the heart of compassion, Muhammad provided the structure.
Hmm.
His compassion wasn't just a feeling. Fiction calls it firm, codified, and enforceable.
Enforceable. How?
Through law. Fiction highlights how Muhammad enshrined the rights of orphans and neighbors into law. He demanded zakat from the wealthy,
Zakat be
a mandatory charity. A fixed percentage of wealth redistributed from the well-off to the needy wasn't optional.
wow.
And he famously declared, "A true believer does not sleep full while his neighbor starves." That makes compassion a legal communal obligation, not just a personal virtue. It literally rewired the social contract.
But despite these huge differences in context, in method, fiction says they held up the same mirror to humanity.
Both asking that fundamental question, what will you do with your power?
Whether it's personal power, community power, political power.
Right. How are you using it, especially towards the most vulnerable? It's a timeless challenge. Still resonates today, obviously.
And that gets to the book's real purpose, doesn't it? Not converting, not condemning.
Exactly. It's about understanding. Holding Jesus's words in one hand, Muhammad's in the other, and just asking, what do they really teach about helping? What do they show us about compassion itself? It's about honest inquiry.
But that honest inquiry means facing the tough stuff. The full truth, as fiction puts it.
Yeah, you have to. Jesus' call to unconditional love, it's overwhelming, beautiful, but fiction notes it leaves no practical scaffolding for society.
Yeah.
It's so pure, it's almost unworkable on a large scale.
Hey, Mom.
His visionary social justice, which was practical, sometimes coexisted with violence, power, and contradiction. Things that are ethically challenging for us now. Things still debated fiercely.
So acknowledging that complexity is key.
It's essential. Because fiction suggests that the real potential for healing, for finding a way forward, might lie in that uncomfortable space between them.
Between the cross and the crescent.
Between the parable and the law. Between radical individual love and structured societal justice. Holding both truths, recognizing their unique power.
Okay, let's focus on Jesus now. Fiction called his approach the madness of mercy, an impossible gift. What did that look like?
Well, it wasn't just about charity as a virtue. It was about charity being you, a mirror of your soul, as fiction says. There's no half measure with Jesus.
It's all or nothing.
Pretty much. Give everything, love everyone, turn the other cheek. His message wasn't just, reasonable advice. It was like a divine fire burning through the world's logic, flipping everything upside down, self-interest, power, what it means to be righteous, a total inversion.
And these weren't just vague ideas. They were direct commands, like Matthew 5.42.
Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Crystal clear.
Or Luke 12.33. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. That's huge.
And immense. And then Matthew 25.4. Whatever you did for one of the least of these, you did for me. Connecting acts of mercy directly to himself.
And maybe the hardest one, Luke 6.35. Love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. It feels almost impossible.
It absolutely feels impossible, and fiction really stresses these are not metaphors. Jesus meant them literally. He was completely redefining righteousness as radical mercy.
So feeding the poor, forgiving, these weren't just nice things to do.
They were faith in action, the core of it. Fiction points out that the one time Jesus explicitly described Judgment Day, he didn't talk about prayer or beliefs or rituals.
What did he talk about?
Only about how people treated the hungry, the sick, the prisoner. Did you help them? If yes, welcome to heaven. If no, you didn't. It's a stark, singular focus on compassionate action.
It really paints a picture of this kingdom of the broken. His world was brutal, right? Roman rule, corruption.
Yeah, the temple entangled in wealth, the poor crushed. And Jesus, he didn't try to reform the system from within or lead a revolt. Fiction says he didn't speak like a rabbi or a revolutionary. He spoke like a mad prophet of love, calling for this radical change inside individual hearts.
And he lived it, didn't he?
Literally.
Lifting up the marginalized.
Totally. Prostitutes, outcasts. He called fishermen, not elites, to change the world. Touched lepers, ate with despised tax collectors, wept openly with grieving people.
Showing that the kingdom belonged to the meek, the suffering.
Exactly. That saving your life meant losing it, that the greatest is the servant. His compassion wasn't safe or calculated. It was, as fiction puts it, dangerous, sacrificial, wildly personal, unbanned by any convention.
So that idea of be perfect, as your Father in heaven is perfect, it wasn't about being flawless.
No, fiction clarifies it wasn't about power or rule following. It meant perfect love. Not like a thunderbolt from heaven, but like broken bread, self-giving, nourishing love for the hungry, a profound redefinition of perfection itself.
But this kind of love, it comes at a cost. There's a huge tension here.
A massive tension. Fiction confronts it directly. These teachings are almost unbearable in the real world, and it forces us to ask those hard questions, even now.
Like, should we really give to everyone who asks, even if we know we might get taken advantage of?
Or enable something bad? Yeah, or should we really sell everything, live poor? What does loving enemies even mean when they're actively harming people?
These aren't easy.
Not at all. And the book points out Jesus never softened his words. No loopholes, no unless clauses. His love didn't negotiate.
Which is?
The miracle and the problem, as
Yeah.
fiction says. Miraculous in its purity, problematic in its application for, running a society. It breaks our logic.
And crucially, he left no system behind.
Exactly. No institutional framework, no economic model, no political theory. He built no system, founded no city. He told people to love the poor, but basically left them to figure out how to do it individually.
And that lack of structure
Is where the church that followed him often failed spectacularly, fiction argues, using his name for greed, for war, building huge cathedrals while people starved outside.
So the vision is perfect, but
It breaks human logic and often human lives when you try to live it without compromise or when institutions try to harness it.
a love beyond law, even his final words on the cross.
Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That sums it up, doesn't it? Where Muhammad would later build law, Jesus spoke only in love songs and riddles, etched into human hearts.
Muhammad led armies, built a state.
Jesus wandered homeless, healing, whispering that the kingdom of heaven is hidden in the humble. He turned everything upside down. The rich warned, the suffering lifted.
And fiction makes that powerful point.
Yeah.
It wasn't just help others. It was that when we feed the hungry, visit the sick.
We are touching God. It's a divine encounter, not just compassion, but connection to the sacred.
Which isn't just religion, it's
Revolutionary metaphysics, fiction calls it, changing our whole understanding of reality. And that kind of revolution, it costs everything.
okay, so from that intensely personal revolutionary love, let's shift gears to Muhammad, the prophet of order Muhammad and the architecture of mercy.
Yes, and the contrast is immediate and striking. Where Jesus used parables, Muhammad delivered proclamations. Where Jesus wandered without home or sword, Muhammad governed, negotiated, fought, and forged. He was deeply involved in building a community, an economy, a legal system.
A man of action in a tumultuous world.
Absolutely. But fiction is very clear. Behind the leader, the strategist, was a man profoundly committed to justice for the weak.
He didn't just ask for compassion.
He commanded it. And in the Quran, mercy isn't just like a nice idea. It's structured into society through specific rules.
Mercy through obligation and law. That's the key phrase, right?
That's central. Fiction gives us core texts. Quran 4.36. Worship none but Allah and be good to parents and to kindred and orphans and the poor and the neighbor who is near. It's explicit.
And those hadith, the sayings.
Powerful stuff. One from Sinan al-Kubra says, he is not a believer whose stomach is full while his neighbor goes hungry. That connects faith directly to social responsibility.
Wow. And another.
From Al-Mujam al-That, the best of people are those who are most beneficial to others. Simple, direct. These aren't suggestions, they're obligations.
So early Islam really institutionalized care.
Completely. Unlike Jesus, Muhammad's vision wasn't left hanging. It was rooted in policy. Zakat, that mandatory charity.
The 2.5% tax.
Right. Collected and redistributed. A ban on usury exploitative interest, which was crippling people back then. And clear obligations to help widows, orphans, travelers. Charity became not just love, but law. A systemic approach.
And did Muhammad live this himself?
Fiction says he lived much of it. Born into that harsh tribal culture, yet he personally gave away food, often went hungry himself, freed slaves, forgave enemies even after victory.
His companions remembered him as?
Gentle, humble, kind, especially to the vulnerable. There's that hadith from Tirmidhi. The merciful are shown mercy by the merciful. Be merciful to those on earth, and the one above the heavens will have mercy upon you. He wasn't just teaching compassion, he was, as fiction puts it, a legislator of compassion, building it into the community's DNA.
But then we hit the complexities, power and the sword, the contradictions.
Yeah, and fiction is direct, but mercy and power do not always share the same tent. Muhammad preached compassion, yes, but he also fought battles to defend and establish his community.
And slavery.
He worked to regulate it, encouraged freeing slaves, but also allowed their taking in war within the norms of the time.
And critics.
While he forgave many, he also approved the execution of critics, poets, and political rivals who threatened his legitimacy.
Fiction mentions specific, difficult examples.
Yes, things like the raid on Banu Qurayza, the execution of hundreds of men after a siege for alleged treason, the silencing of some critics by death, slavery persisting, female captives taken as concubines, though regulated. These are ethical flashpoints, undeniably.
They need context, of course.
Yeah.
7th century Arabia was brutal.
Absolutely. But the contrast remains. Jesus died forgiving enemies. Muhammad conquered Mecca, wielded political power.
It's that fundamental difference in relationship to earthly power.
Exactly. Yet both claimed the same God, both wept for the poor. This tension between compassion and coercion is central to understanding Muhammad. Was he a reformer working within brutal systems? Did divine mission get tangled with human ambition and the needs of state building?
Fiction suggests.
Likely that he was both. A complex figure shaped by divine inspiration and harsh earthly realities.
But despite these complexities, his message on justice as faith was incredibly clear.
Undeniable. A hungry neighbor. Your faith is questionable. An abandoned orphan. The system failed, neglected poor. You risk God's anger. It's immediate, tangible.
He built this civilizational ethic. Prayer, fasting, pilgrimage, and charity was a core pillar.
A duty. Helping others wasn't just nice. It was a sign that you truly believe. Proof of devotion. The Quran links it directly to reward. Those who spend in charity, their reward is with their Lord. No fear will there be concerning them, nor will they grieve. Social responsibility is spiritual practice.
And did this system work? Did it achieve success?
Initially, yes. Fiction points to early Islamic governance, like under Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab, where poverty was dramatically reduced. Huge institutions for food, shelter, education sprang up centuries before, similar public welfare systems in many other places. Charity became a functioning societal mechanism.
So seeing Muhammad as a prophet in full, it's about embracing that paradox.
Yeah, I think so. He aimed to redeem the world, not escape it, to infuse existing structures with justice. He embraced the sword when needed, but also laid it down in mercy, led armies, cried over the dead. He was a prophet of structure, not calling you to leave the world, but to transform it through justice.
Which sets us up perfectly for a direct comparison. 2 roads, 1 cry.
Right. 2 roads, but responding to the same fundamental human cry for help. Despite the different methods, both stood firmly against just standing by while others suffered.
Both lifted the poor, scolded the rich, saw compassion as this sacred obligation.
Fiction's analogy is great here. Comparing them is like comparing a fire and a fortress.
Fire being
A purifying and wild, consuming the self and love, the fortress, Muhammad, protective and ordered, building structures for safety and justice. One speaks to the soul, the other to society.
Okay, let's break it down. First, the essence of mercy, soul versus system. How did Jesus see the relationship between the helper and the helped?
He just dissolves the boundary, he says, when you give to the poor, you give directly to him, to Christ. The call is internal. Be transformed through love. A kind of mystical merging with the suffering other.
In Muhammad.
He acknowledges the distance between God and humanity, but bridging it requires action-obedient service to creation as part of divine law. The call is external. Prove your faith through justice. Tangible acts within a system.
Which leads to radical love versus structured generosity. Jesus' commands love enemies, sell possessions. They really do defy the real world.
Totally. Fiction calls them calls to spiritual recklessness, divine foolishness. They aren't meant to be a government plan. Jesus wasn't building an empire. He was trying to crack open the human heart, dismantle selfishness, fear. It's a mystic fire.
It makes you wonder, like, if he meant sell everything, who could actually do that?
Exactly. It's a question that highlights just how radical, how disruptive his message was intended to be.
Whereas Muhammad, he understood systems.
Deeply. Charity wasn't just a feeling, it was measured, regulated, and tracked. Zakat wasn't optional kindness, it was a divine obligation, legally enforced. His rules protected orphans, gave women inheritance rights, revolutionary back then, mandated aid for travelers, the enslaved. If Jesus' way was fire, Muhammad's was a blueprint. Practical, implementable.
Okay, now we have to revisit the really tough comparison. Violence and mercy. The uncomfortable truth.
Yeah, this is where the paths diverge most sharply. Fiction calls it tense and real.
Jesus actively refused violence, told Peter to put away his sword, died forgiving his killers.
His mercy embraced even those who rejected and harmed him. There's simply no record of him harming another, no vengeance, no force. His kingdom wasn't of this world.
Muhammad, though, while compassionate, also fought wars, led raids, approved capital punishments.
Right. Forgave enemies, yes, but also executed those seen as traitors threatening the community. Permitted slavery and polygyny within the existing norms, though he regulated them. His compassion was bound by the pragmatism of rule, operating within the complex, often brutal realities of building a state.
The difference is stark. Where Jesus was martyred, Muhammad became king.
Exactly. His compassion wasn't just from the heart, it was from the throne, backed by political power. This doesn't negate his sincerity, fiction argues, but it changes the nature of that compassion. It shows the complexities when spirituality meets statecraft.
What about who they focused on helping? Defining circles of compassion. Both spoke of the poor, the orphan.
Yes, but with different emphasis. Jesus identified completely with the broken. Blessed are the poor, the meek, the mourning. He spent his life with the rejected and criminalized. He saw no hierarchy, just souls longing for love. His circle is ultimately borderless. Everyone.
Muhammad emphasized the vulnerable too, orphan, widow, enslaved, debtor. But the call was more towards
Justice and communal responsibility. You help because it is right, because Allah commands it. And often the focus was first on those within your community, the neighbor, the relative, the fellow believer, establishing a strong core. Though fiction adds, many verses urge kindness beyond them too, especially to the needy, regardless of faith. Build a just society from within, then expand.
and the consequences of not helping. Final judgments.
Both are crystal clear. Your faith is measured by mercy. Not by your rituals, not by your beliefs, but by your mercy.
Jesus' warning in Matthew 25. Eternal separation for ignoring the least of these. It's terrifyingly direct.
A powerful indictment of indifference. And Muhammad warns of hypocrisy. Ignoring the hungry, hoarding wealth. These are signs of false faith. Inviting spiritual failure, divine displeasure. Both say indifference has eternal consequences.
So wrapping up the comparison. Same cry, different tongues,
Yeah.
different times, different places, but they heard the same plea.
That same human cry, who will feed me? Who will defend me? Who sees me? It echoes down the ages.
And their answers.
Distinct, but vital. Jesus points to your heart. Become love and you'll find heaven. Internal transformation. Muhammad points to the structure. Build justice and you'll be worthy of paradise. Collective responsibility, systemic change.
And the conclusion is, we need both.
Absolutely. The dreamer who walks barefoot and the builder who enshrines dignity in law. The radical individual love and the robust societal justice. Two essential paths towards mercy.
Okay, so what happened next? After these towering figures were gone, how did their followers handle these powerful, demanding messages? Let's get into the hands of the heirs, how followers carried and corrupted the call to help.
This is crucial because as fiction explores, we're moving beyond the holy books and into the hands of history. How did pure ideas meet messy human organizations?
Let's start with Christianity, from martyrs to monarchs.
Yeah.
Jesus left so little, structurally speaking.
Right. No institution, no bank account, no army, just stories, followers, and a cross. A very humble start.
But then astonishingly quickly,
Within 300 years, it's the official religion of the Roman Empire, and that had a huge upside for charity. Massive charitable expansion.
how so?
Well, early Christians, Like an axe, pooled resources, cared for widows, orphans. They created the world's first organized charity networks. Later, monasteries became these vital hubs for hospitals, soup kitchens, and education, social safety nets.
And individuals, too. Saints like Francis of Assisi.
Exactly. Renouncing wealth, living in poverty, missionaries building schools, hospitals, genuine, often heroic attempts to live out the Sermon on the Mount: feed, heal, love.
But then, the downside.
Yes. Power corrupted the message, as fiction puts it starkly. The church itself got incredibly wealthy while peasants often starved.
Yeah.
Bishops lived like princes.
And the Crusades?
A horrifying inversion. Baptized violence as virtue, slaughtering Muslims, Jews, other Christians, all in the name of the Christ who said, love your enemies. It's chilling.
And colonialism. Slavery.
Often justified through twisted theology. Rationalizing oppression. It was a profound betrayal. Jesus said to give everything. Many churches hoarded everything instead, building monuments while the poor suffered. The radical edge got domesticated.
Now, shifting to Islam, the law becomes life. Muhammad left more behind.
Yes, revelation, but also a community, a legal system, a blueprint for society. His death focused his followers on implementation.
So they could build on that structure.
Immediately. Early caliphates started implementing structured care, turning the vision into civilizational practice. Zakat, the charity tax, and waqf, charitable endowments, funded hospitals, orphanages, food banks across the vast Islamic world.
And these institutions were quite advanced.
Remarkably so. Cities like Baghdad, Cairo, Cordoba had free public hospitals centuries before. Similar things in Europe, care for all.
And scholars reinforce this.
Thinkers like Al-Ghazali, Ibn Khaldun emphasized that true faith required helping the poor, resisting exploitation. It was woven into Islamic thought. And traditions like Ramadan charity are still incredibly powerful today. They really tried to encode compassion into law.
But there was a downside here, too.
Inevitably, dynasties grew rich and corrupt. Zakat funds sometimes went to wars or elites, not the poor. Sectarian violence, Sunni versus Shia, undermined unity.
And things like slavery, inequality.
They persisted, often defended through selective readings, deviating from the Prophet's reforms. Charity sometimes became performative for public honor, not spiritual growth. As fiction notes, Muhammad wanted a society where no one was hungry. But in time, Islamic societies like Christian ones fell prey to power and politics. The spirit got lost in the system.
Which brings us to that paradox. When systems replace spirit.
Yeah, Jesus' message was so radical it couldn't be fully systematized without losing something, but when followers tried, they often domesticated it.
And Muhammad's message was designed for a system.
But when the system got too big, too bureaucratic, too political, it sometimes buried the spirit it was meant to serve. Rules over mercy. In both cases, fiction says compassion became policy, then policy became tradition, then tradition forgot the poor.
But the original fire wasn't completely extinguished.
No, fiction highlights where it stayed alive. Not in palaces or pulpits, but among the humble, the nun bathing lepers, the father feeding neighbors, the anonymous donor, the saint living in poverty, the beggar sharing his last crumb.
They weren't arguing theology.
They just helped. They kept the core message alive through simple action.
So the legacy isn't clean.
Far from it. Full of contradictions, betrayals, beauty, and blood. Neither prophet could control the future. Their teachings were echoed and distorted, lived and denied.
And this feels important.
In every generation, someone hears those words unfiltered, raw, and decides to try, to love, to feed, to be a fool for God, to build justice. These are the ones you remember, not just the words, but the fire behind the words.
Which brings us right back to now. Prophets in the present charity in a broken world. How do these ancient voices speak into our time?
Our time of, intense paradox. More billionaires than ever before and more starving children. Smart cities next to sprawling slums. Mindfulness apps while refugees drown. Fiction says it's easy to entomb prophets in stained glass or script. Harder to let them judge us.
And that judgment,
Yeah.
it can be sharp. Like with Jesus' parable of the rich man and Lazarus.
Oh, absolutely. The rich man feasting, Lazarus starving at the gate. The rich man didn't do anything cruel to Lazarus. He just ignored him. Indifference.
And that was enough.
Enough to condemn him. The message is stark. Indifference is a form of violence. It's about what you fail to do, the suffering you ignore.
And the modern application is right there, isn't it?
Painfully so. Lazarus still lies at our gates now in Haiti, Gaza, Appalachia, on the sidewalk outside Whole Foods, maybe just on our news feed. And the rich man. Wall Street. TikTok. In church. In you. In me. It implicates us all. Fiction's line is brutal. We don't need to steal to be wicked. We just need to not care.
Wow. Okay, what about Islam's blueprint in a global economy? How does that challenge us?
It's a huge challenge to modern capitalism. Muhammad banned usury, exploitative interest. Our global economy thrives on exploitative debt.
He required redistribution zakat.
But modern systems are often underfunded or mismanaged. He taught wealth is a test, a trust. But today, prosperity gospel and petro-Islam often equate riches with divine blessing, justifying accumulation.
So it's a missed opportunity, that blueprint.
Fiction suggests it is. It could, in theory, offer a spiritual economic alternative where helping the poor is a right, not a favor. But instead, our world runs on consumption, hoarding, and branding. Justice becomes a product, charity, a tax write-off, giving gets lost in PR and guilt.
And then there's Jesus and the radical heart. Still personal, still almost unbearable.
Right. Those commands give to everyone, sell possessions, love enemies. They're completely unpractical in a society built on competition and fear. But they aren't meant to be practical that way. They're revolutionary medicine for a poisoned soul, healing the individual heart from selfishness, from fear.
Fiction imagines what if we actually took him seriously?
CEOs selling homes, soldiers dropping guns, churches emptying accounts, politicians washing feet. It's a radical vision.
But the reality is,
We don't take him seriously. We worship him. We don't obey him. And fiction's killer line, that's the difference between a religion and a revolution. One offers comfort, the other demands transformation.
so in this dark age, they offer shared light.
A map out of madness.
Yeah.
Both taught God is near to the broken, faith without compassion is worthless, and judgment comes down to how we treat the least.
So summarizing their directions for us now, Jesus pointed,
Inward, die to self, become love. Radical internal change.
and Muhammad pointed.
Outward, build justice, protect the weak. Systemic communal responsibility.
And in our world today, with all its crises,
Fiction argues passionately. We don't need more opinions. We need more compassion with hands. We need to feel again, to give again, to believe again, not in dogma, but in the worth of the other.
their bones might be dust, but their voices. Fiction says they still burn.
They do, and they're calling you listening, not just to admire them, not just to debate them, but to follow.
To give when it's inconvenient, when it costs something, to fight for the voiceless.
Yes. They invite you, fiction suggests, to become either a fool for love like Jesus, embracing that boundless, maybe impractical personal mercy,
Or a worker for justice, like Muhammad, committed to building structures that protect the weak, making compassion a right.
or maybe, even better,
Both.
both, because the world is starving, not just for food, but for meaning, mercy, and the holy discomfort of doing what is right.
And maybe, just maybe, you were born for such a time as this.